Hi guys, it's Kelly and I'm back with another video. Today's video is a little special because it is featuring the collaboration stamp set from Stamptember from Simon Says Stamp and Honeybee Stamps. So today I'm going to actually make two cards and I'm going to show you how to do an edge-to-edge design for a background in both using the stamp or using the die. Now before we go too far along, I do want to mention that these are first come first serve. They're only produced once. So the Stamptember set is once it's gone, it's gone. They do also have bundles. I won't be using the die today. So the card that we're making today, if you have the Stamptember set later on, and you don't have the dies, you won't need them for my card. But I do, they offer bundles if you want to do that, where you can get both of them. And typically they sell out really quickly. There are still like a couple from the last like day or two. But if you're unfamiliar, I will link below and you can head over there and check it out or to pick up your set. So doing a edge-to-edge pattern. A couple of different things first with stamping. So one of the benefits of doing it with stamping is you can make it look like a continuous pattern. And what I mean by that is you can take your stamps off the edge and it will look like the pattern continues on. One of the things to know, I was talking over it, was when you're doing this, make sure you fill up the middle first because you can always work around that perimeter. And you'll notice that some, like these elements are not touching because I'm like stamping them all at the same time. There's nothing wrong with that kind of pattern. And you could fill in the left-hand side that way with all of them kind of separate. I like when mine are a little bit more connected, so I am going to use some Eclipse masking paper so that I can cut some masks. You don't have to do this. You can stamp them separately and not have them overlap and still end up with a really pretty pattern. When you're doing the stamping on the masking paper, remember, it doesn't have to be a perfect image. We just need the edge lines to follow so that we can fussy cut it out. I like to, when I'm fussy cutting anything, I like to trim them down to smaller pieces just so that way I don't have to be fighting with the paper because sometimes when you're trying to turn it, you know, the paper will give you kind of a hard time. And then I'm going to go ahead and put them in place. Here, I thought I had it good, but on the right-hand side, it didn't exactly line up. Here's a little trick you can use if you wear darker colored nail polish like I do. You can use the die release tool from Honeybee to just slide underneath there so that you don't leave any nail polish marks. I have learned that the hard way. So now this one's really great because it has a couple of different leaves, but the leaves also have a couple of different vines. And so here I am going to stamp one of the little tiny leaves, but I'm really going to use that line to make it look like that pumpkin and that leaf are connected. So basically once we have our first round down, if you're overlapping, you'll go ahead and put your masks on, and then we're just going to fill in those edges. So you can see almost everything that I'm using is kind of falling off the edge. This set has 2 clusters in it, which is really great. So I was able to use the bigger one to fill up the middle, and then the one in the top right, I also used in the bottom left, but I rotated it differently so you wouldn't be able to tell that they were the same type of pumpkins. This is something that I have done, you know, in other videos as well. Sometimes it can be hard if you don't know what to do or you want to use all the images, you know, in a card, and creating a background like this is a really easy way to like use everything that you have in the set if that's what you're trying to do. But I really like these pumpkins. I think they're super fun. They are a little bit more fine line than I would normally like gravitate towards. So I'm kind of surprised, but I really do like them. Plus they'd be great to be embossed with those fine line details and like all the leaves and stuff. So now that once our stamping is done, we're going to go ahead and remove any of the masks. And then we will have our pattern complete for the stamping. Now you could leave it like this. You could color it. If you did it on watercolor paper, you could watercolor it or colored pencils or whatever. I'm going to use my alcohol markers, but I am going to get the rest of my stuff done for card number 2. So this is the bold background pumpkin patch from Honeybee. I've been using a couple of the bold backgrounds on my channels. You can use them a bunch of different ways, but this one, I'm going to use it the way it is intended. If you're not familiar with these, basically you have a base layer, that's that piece that's on the green, and then you kind of build everything up on top. On the layering guide on the Honeybee website, it tells you how many pumpkins you need to cut. This one they did really great because each die for the pumpkins cuts all the pieces for that pumpkin. So if you need 2 pumpkins, and you only have to do those 2. So here I have cut it out of the green cardstock, the background. Honestly, I thought that I was going to go a little bit lighter with the green, and that's why I chose the one that I did. It doesn't really affect the end of the card, but I can tell you that it was pretty pointless for me to cut it out of this particular green because I didn't end up utilizing how light the green was, which is why I chose it in the first place. But that's okay. Sometimes card making doesn't always go like one would hope. So once I lay that down, and then how I figure out if I have enough pumpkins or not, I obviously check the layering guide, but I lay them out on like the base layer. I lay them out on that background to see where they go, just to make sure I have enough. And then the rest of the pieces I kind of spread out. Here I wanted to show you for the little teeny tiny pieces like the stem, with that die release tool, you can just poke right through it. So here, I'm showing you that a red, orange, and a teal are complementary colors. A true triadic would be yellow, would be the color that we added. I am going to go for a-ish split complement. So a split complement would be red, yellow, green, and teal. I'm going to use the red, orange. Like that's how I'm going to color my pumpkins more red, orange. But I also, just wanted to touch on, I did my color wheel in very bright colors because those are the colors that I enjoy. But whether it is a little bit more desaturated, kind of like my greens are here, or if it's super bright and summer, like a neon green, or somewhere in the middle, though you want their tone to be similar, like how their saturation level, like how gray they are, you would probably want that to be similar. Like you wouldn't want a hot pink with a muted orange, though that might work. I mean, I don't know. I've never tried it. I'm not a muted color person. But anyway, the color families still remain as complements. So even though I didn't go as bright green as I thought I was going to go, I went for a more muted yellow green, that has a little bit more gray in it. It still works really well with the orange and still works really well with the teal. So as far as the leaves go, I really just added kind of some darkness into the center to help them look a little bit more cupped the way that they would. And then as I worked outer to the outer edges, I just added a little bit lighter. Originally, I thought I was going to go all the way out to the YG 93, but I didn't. I just went with the 95. And I think that this would be a really fun background. Either one of them, the die or the stamp, would be really fun background if you had obviously for fall, but if you had, a niece, a daughter, whatever that was really into Cinderella and you wanted to do a Cinderella card, I think a little gatefold card that includes the little pumpkin patch with all its vines would be super cute. So for my darkest color here, we talked recently in another video about kind of warm and cool colors and selecting your colors just a little bit. For this one, because I did want it to be more muted, I went with an E09, and I think it's called Burnt Sienna. And it is. I just double checked. So this, on some of my pumpkins, is going to be the darkest color. And on some of them, my darkest color is going to be this YR09. You can mix and match these. Like all your pumpkins don't have to be the same colors. I did just a little bit where some of them I added that darkest part, but other ones I did not add the darkest part. But they didn't stray too far from each other. So basically, with the pumpkins, we're going to add shading kind of where it indents at the top where the stem is. We want to add a little bit of shading into each of those little segments to help give it some dimension there. And I find that doing the flicking is really helpful with doing the pumpkins to help make sure that they have a highlight on their rounder parts. And for like this one where there's not, like, you can't see the bottom of it, it's very clearly, we're looking at it like straight down. For the outside edges, I'm really just doing like a simple little line. I'm not bringing up too much of the color so that it stays pretty light. Same thing with the, the darker ones, doing that EO9. For some of them, it's only going to be an EO9, a YR09, and a YR07. And they'll be naturally darker pumpkins. But I colored all of them the same. I am just going to show you this little bunch here because we still have a whole, we still got lots of other things. I got lots of other things to share with you guys. So one thing to know is with Stamptember, they did change it this year. This is the first year. It's always been at midnight. They changed it to noon. Which I think is probably really helpful for a lot of people, especially if, they're a little bit older. I mean, I don't know how it affects other time zones because I'm in the same time zone as Simon Says Stamp. They're actually only about 2 hours from me. But since we're in the same time zone, that piece of it doesn't affect me. And I'm a night owl. So, but regardless, I do think that it was good of them. The other thing is, I think for a limited amount of time, they have a free shipping over $25 with a specific code, which over the years has been something that's been really, really challenging for customers. Has been that if they wanted to buy the Stamptember set, then they had to pay the shipping for every single one of them instead of having them all be shipped together, because logistically that would just be a nightmare. So I do think that they're offering, that free shipping part for, I don't think it's forever. I think it is for a limited amount of time. But I will put that code with the link below in YouTube. So now, once all the pumpkins are done being colored, I knew that I wanted that teal color. So for the stamping portion, to get the background color, we're just going to pick our color. In this case, I picked Duck Blue. It's a BG49. It's one of the first markers I ever bought, and I still love it. But so you're basically just going to fill in the background. So it works best usually if you do like a little outline to give yourself a buffer, and then you just want to go in the same direction, because even though we're using alcohol markers and they do kind of blend and flatten out, you still can see your strokes. And also for this, you want to make sure that you have a nicely filled marker. I did have to take a break and fill mine just so that it wasn't like getting streaky. So I am going to fill this in, and this is really going to help drive home the feeling of it being a pattern paper, or, something that's just a portion of something else. So here, you guys know I'm matchy-matchy. I got a real problem. So this one over to the right is the Adriatic from Hero Arts. So what I'm doing right here basically is a me thing. It's completely unnecessary for anybody else. But because I like my stuff to be super matchy-matchy, I am going back over this with a B06 just so that it matches this cardstock. And if you really like this cardstock, the combination of these two colors is pretty much spot on. Plus, doing that second layer is going to help me get a little bit of a smoother look. The other thing to make note of, if you're going to do an edge-to-edge card, you're going to want to kind of take those colors and get the edge of your paper just so you don't have any of those white edges showing through, and it genuinely looks like the pattern continues to go on. So now that we have that done, we're going to set that aside and we're going to switch over to the die portion of creating the edge-to-edge for the die. So here, what I'm doing is I'm going in with those same greens and I am coloring the base. So really it's just the vines for the most part because we have those extra leaves that we've cut to go on top. So what you see me doing with the leaves is just outlining that edge just so that light green won't show through. So I am doing just a little bit of shading with the vines, just so that there's some interest there instead of it being all one color. But I did want to speak on this. I am speeding this up, by the way, not that fast. On the Honeybee layering guide, it kind of shows you the darker color, like the colors that you would want to use if you were just cutting it out of cardstock. And not doing any of the coloring. So that's really helpful because it will, show you how to do like the pumpkins so that it actually looks dimensional with just cardstock. Coloring is kind of my happy place. And so for me, I enjoy doing this part of it, but I understand that that's not for everybody. So if you don't want to have to color it, just cut it out of whatever color green you would like the vines and the leaves to be from the beginning, and you won't have to do any of this. So I'm doing the same, like I said, the same 3 colors and just kind of blending them out. I am adding I'm adding darkness closest to where the pumpkins are going to lay on top because that vine would have a little bit of cast shadow. Same thing with the like the loops on the vines. I'm trying to have like a kind of a darker and a lighter edge. But I'm just going to, continue on doing that. And then the lightest color is that YG95. I kind of thought about going back and doing that, the 93, but I didn't really think, I just didn't think it was necessary to add in a 4th color. But obviously when you're working on your projects, whatever makes your heart happy. So here, just going in, filling in anything that is left over with that 95. So these are the same leaves. And I'm going to, again, just like I colored them with the stamped one, I'm coloring my die cuts the same way. So darkness kind of up the middle and around the sides because they do look a little bit more cupped that way, and then blending out that darkest color with my mid-tone, and then going in and getting just like the lightest at the edges, just those little teeny tiny edges that are left with the lightest color. So one thing to note, you can see as I'm doing this, I'm working on a glass mat. The color is getting underneath it. When we switch to the pumpkins, I don't think I showed it, but you do want to make sure if you're working on a non-porous surface, that you do clean that up with alcohol, or you could use colorless blender. I use alcohol because colorless blender is expensive and I'm a cheap chicken. But you do want to make sure that you clean up that piece that's on the glass mat, because as you color the like the oranges, you will, well, I guess you could color pumpkin a different color than orange, but I used orange. You will pick that up. So do make sure that you clean up your surface if you're using a glass mat or anything that's non-porous. So for the pumpkins, this is the largest one. I like to, with all my lovely layers, I do it the same way. I lay each layer on top, and then I mark where the shadows should go. And then that way I can separate them out and work on them as individual pieces. You don't have to do this if, if you're comfortable, or if you're using all the same color, you don't have to do this portion of it, because I am using white cardstock and I am, I don't want that to show. I do take the color, and kind of go around the edges, same thing that I was doing with the leaves before. And you'll see on these, like this particular pumpkin, which is the largest one, this has the most layers. It has 6 layers counting the stem. But when you're doing those bold background, which I love, I think they're so great, because you'll see when we're done coloring this, you'll have a completely built pumpkin that you can then put, with its background, or you can use it totally separate of the background. And I love that. I love being able to get kind of more for your money. So, you could do up all of the pumpkins as dies and then, place them in a wagon, or like Honeybee has lots of, like they have little, a wood crate, or like terracotta pots, or like you could put them in another container because they are whole and complete, separate of the background. But so as I go through and just add the shading, this one I am doing, like I said, I marked them all. But you can kind of see just based on the edges, like the ripples in the bottom edge, that where the sections are going to be. So if you wanted to just wing it, you could. You wouldn't have to lay every single piece like I do, because you can see where the indents are, where each section is going to be on the, like on the die cut, if you just look at the edge of it. So, now that I am done and it is finished, I am going to start building it. And again, this is where that layering guide comes in, because here, like you do, see, I went to go do that third piece because that's what I would normally do, but the layering guide actually says to do the stem next. So I'm going to put my little stem in there. I can see that there's just a little sliver of white that's showing through. So I'm going to grab the brown and get that, and then that way I can continue on in building my pumpkin. Now I'm going to show you the coloring of one more, just because it is a different shape. It's more of like an elongated gourd shape versus a regular pumpkin. But also, once you get this together, if at any point like you're a little unhappy with your shading or you feel like it needs more, you can always go back in. So here I have already marked the shadows. So I spared you that part of the process. But then I'm going to go in. Now for this one, because it is, there's not a lot of real estate that is the shadow. I didn't do a whole lot of flicking, especially for those back pieces. There just wasn't enough room to do that. So even if you're an inexperienced colorist, or you are new to card making, you can easily do this just by kind of doing lines instead of doing the flicking. The only place that you can really see the flicking, like on this particular one, is this center piece. And that was just because it's the lightest part. It's on top. It's going to catch the most light. And again, you just want to make sure that you pay attention to that layering guide, because I think almost all of these, like you do the first 2 layers together, then the stem, then the next like kind of piece that will go, and then you'll continue on until the end. I'm using my Misty Precision glue gun because it just makes my life so much easier, so much easier. And this one I had a little bit of trouble with the stem. I couldn't get it to stick. And then my tweezers, because I use them for everything, these are Honeybee's reverse tweezers. I had something on my tweezers that then came off on my stem, so I had to go back in and try to remove it. It was probably dry glue, honestly. But so now we're going to build this up, and those tweezers are so helpful for this. And I used to be such a snot about it. Like, I don't need tweezers. Yes, I did. I did need them. I just didn't know I needed them. So here, like, that's what I talked about. If you're unhappy with how your shading is looking, you can always go back in after it's built and add more. So for the rest of these, just in case you have that bold background pumpkin piece and you're trying to figure out how they layer together, I wanted to make sure to include kind of the building of each pumpkin. But so this one I ended up coloring 3 and I actually only needed 2. I think I might have just misread the sheet, which is on me, but that's okay because I had cute little pumpkins to put in my photos. But it will tell you. So like that gourd one that we just did, there's only one of those. I think there's 2 of these ones that we're doing here, and then the last littlest ones, there's 3 of those. So I think it's so cool how they draw, like how their illustrator draws them to include the same element, like whether it's what did we do before? We've done the plumerias, we've done the roses on my channel as well. So if like the way that they do those so that you can use them with the background or without, and then she draws them in a way where you can't tell that it's all like that there's 2 of the same pumpkin because they're in different orientations and they're not next to each other. And I just think it's super cool. So all of my stems I did brown, but in hindsight, I maybe would have done them green because they do blend into that background. I don't think it's really noticeable, honestly. At least not when I'm looking at it. I don't think it's super noticeable. But if it's something that, you're like, ooh, I don't like that. They don't turn brown until they're cut off the vine and they're showing them on the vine. Then color them green. Here, we've talked a lot about, making sure the edges don't stick out. So I'm going in with one of the oranges, and I know it's not super pretty orange on the green, but I'm not worried about that. I just want to make sure that I'm covering up the edges. Here, I made a boo-boo, and I believe in being transparent, so I'm going to tell you about my boo-boo. What is going on here is you're supposed to put the leaves down first. And the reason you put down the leaves first is because sometimes they do tuck under the pumpkins, and that way, you won't have to do what I'm about to do here in like 10 seconds when I realize that my pumpkin is sitting on top of a leaf, but you can't see the whole leaf, that I kind of have to like pry it up a little bit. And it did start to tear the paper underneath. You can see it right there. But fortunately, I don't have to take the whole thing off. I can kind of slide the leaf underneath, but do yourself a favor and do it the way that it's intended to be done and start with the leaves first. Don't worry about doing I think I just got, like, the pumpkins were so pretty, and I think I just got excited about putting them down, that I just lost track of the fact that this is what I was supposed to do. And the leaves are the same way as well. Like, there's a couple of different sizes and stuff, but they do have some repeat ones, so that way, you'll have them. So now here, what I'm going to do is, this part can be a little monotonous because there's so many like thin lines, but I just, you just got to stick it out. So I put glue on that, and then I am putting that down on top of that, what is it? Adriatic? I think that's what it is. And then here, I just wanted to show you, if you did have extra pumpkins, you could put them on top of the leaves to change the look of it. I am going to go in, and because I wanted to show you this because you have this like touchable dimension with the die. So you can go in, I just used a C5. You can go in and add a cast shadow, which is going to help kind of lift it up. And especially for the flat one that we just stamped, adding that little bit of cast shadow. I do mine kind of down and to the left. I have a lot of videos on that if you're interested in hearing more about it. But it really does give that flat one a lot more dimension and lift those pumpkins up. For some reason, when it comes to fall, I just love adding gold accents. Certainly, this is not going to be for everybody, and if it's not for you, totally skip this step. But I am going to add some gold perfect pearls, and I'm just going to do some little kind of like splashes, little spatters, kind of all over both cards. It's not anything that is like super in your face, but it is really pretty when the light catches it and you can see, that little bit of gold accent on them. It also, helps fill in the background a little bit. So here, with the Simon one, I told you I don't have the dies for it, so that one I'm going to cut into a rectangle. The other one is from Blessings of Fall, and that one does have the other one has a die too, I just don't have it, but I have the die for Blessings of Fall. So I'm going to treat that with my anti-static tool. This is that same colored cardstock from Hero Arts. I stamped it in Honeybee's gold pigment ink, and then I am going to sprinkle on some gold embossing powder for both of them. Hit that with the heat tool until it's nice and smooth. I do preheat mine. And then for the one that I don't have a die for, I am going to trim it into a rectangle. So that's why I specifically stamped it into the corner. It means that 2 of my edges are already straight, and I just have to worry about trimming 2 edges instead of 4. And I always do this first because sometimes when you take your paper through your like die cutting machine, you can get like ridges and stuff on your paper, and I don't want that on my sentiment. So this one, because it's going to sit on top of the leaves, I can just go ahead and glue this down. And I chose to go for both of them kind of like middle, like top center. And this, like I said, this is already lifted up. It's sitting on top of all those leaves. For this one, I am going to use just a little bit of foam tape. And I've also given it just like 1/8 of an inch mat on some gold cardstock to tie it in. I originally was looking at kind of like down to the bottom right, but I did end up liking it, you know, more towards the top middle. And this one, you know, you could trim this down, you can, you know, give it a mat. It's a little more difficult to do with the die cut one, but it is possible. So then the last little piece, just to finish it off, is to add some gemstones. I grabbed the Americana one because it has gold gemstones, but they also have a metallic gold, I think, or back to basics. So anyway, that's both. So I hope this inspires you to create some edge-to-edge designs on your cards. Don't forget, you know, it is a first come, first serve for that Stamped Temper set. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I appreciate your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Bye.